Thank you, Jesse. Thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. It's a pleasure to be here again. We've been a Sustainability Slam sponsor for more than 10 years, so it's exciting to see all these stories come to life and really learn about what other companies around the state are doing to support sustainability. It makes a huge difference for all of us and all of our futures, and that's a really important thing to do. I really want to also thank the NHBSR for 25 years. That's an amazing accomplishment, and it really has a lasting impact on our state. So thank you. Thank you, Michelle, and we're in great hands with Zena, so we're glad to be back. And I get the pleasure of introducing Simon, and my notes are over here. So I had the pleasure of meeting Simon last night for dinner, and I learned a lot about a pretty amazing man from Australia, or at least that's what he keeps telling us. If you hear him speak, you'll think he's an American, and so I'm really, really proud to welcome Simon Mainwaring, one of NHBSR's favorite past keynote speakers. Simon is a brand futurist, CEO of We First, and Wall Street Journal best-selling author of Lead With Me, The Business Revolution That Will Save Our Future. His work has earned recognition from Forbes, McKinsey, and Real Leaders magazine, and he's consistently ranked among the top keynote speakers in the world. Simon has spent his career proving that purpose-driven leadership isn't just good ethics, it's good business. Please join me in welcoming Simon.
Good evening, everyone. Can I just say, looking at those skits, you are such an awesome community. Can we put our hands together for everyone who was bold enough to get up there and do that? That was amazing. That is not common. And also, Michelle, congratulations and thank you so much for your extraordinary leadership. Thank you, thank you. And it's such a privilege to be back here. I had the privilege of speaking here probably 10, 12 years ago. And wow, what a difference a decade makes, huh? Who saw that coming? COVID, political, technological, economic headwinds, right? And, that's such powerful context for why this is such a special organization. You provide the human scaffolding that gives us a chance to restore our future when so many things seem to be falling apart, right? All these institutions, all this hard-won work, all this momentum we had going. We've now got to lean on each other. Who here has felt challenged in the last 12 months in terms of their commitment to purpose and sustainability? Right? Raise your hand. Who here has felt like giving up at different points? Come on, be honest. I felt like giving up at different points. And who here has consumed a disproportionate amount of alcohol and chocolate? Right? Liars, you with your hands down. You're all liars. We've all been self-medicating in ways we never imagined. But, that's why I want to talk about why your organization is so important. Because we need force multipliers out there in the world right now to accelerate and scale our response to these headwinds that we're facing. And there were so many wonderful people acknowledged tonight, by Zena and by Lisa. And is there anyone who wasn't recognized tonight in any way? If you were not recognized on any of those slides, please stand up. Please stand up. Anyone who wasn't recognized on any... Oh my God, was everybody recognized? Because I was about to say to you, what the hell are you doing? We need your help. But no, it's an amazing organization. And that's a real testament to you that everyone is so deeply involved and committed to the community and showing up in meaningful ways. But I want to speak to some of the pattern recognition that I see in our work across lots of different organizations and different industries that could inform how you move forward as a community. So just by way of background, the book that you have, and firstly, thank you for sharing the book. We're lucky to work with a lot of brands that and that the book is full of what we have learned works in doing the work with them. It's not thought leadership, it's not author abstract stuff, it's, oh my God, what are companies doing for real? So I really hope that it supports your work. And so you can see some of the companies that inform what's in that book, so appreciate you taking the time to read it. So with that in mind, I want to look at the context of where we are right now. If we were all at a bar together, I think we are. If we're all drinking together, I think we are. You might say, oh, for the love of God, what's going on? What do we do? What do you see from inside all of these organizations. And what I've really observed is it's a moment in time where we all need to lean in together and mimic living systems and the natural world and work together to drive systemic change on an order I've never seen before. And that may sound obvious because that was always the case, but the recognition that we need to show up that way has never been so clear. Never been clear that no one else, there's no cavalry coming, we are the cavalry. And we also are very, very aware that we're out of time. We are absolutely out of time, depending on who you read and what research you look at. We've already passed that 1.5 degrees Celsius rise in global temperature threshold, which has huge implications for forces that are already in motion and hurtling back towards us from the future to our present day. So let's look at the why of we. Why are we starting to show up in a collaborative way? Why is NHBSR so meaningful right now? Probably more meaningful than in any other of the 25 years. The reason is there's a conspiracy of circumstances that haven't existed before. There are the stakes, there are the stakeholders, and there is the story coming together all at once. And I want to explain what I mean by that. With the stakes, I'm going to oversimplify. You are the most hyperactive little technology piece. Stop it. All right. Climate, politics, and technology are three big mega trends out there that are really impacting our lives. Yet an organization like yours can be so impactful because we're so highly attuned, more so than ever, to these challenges. For example, with climate, we're feeling it. Like 69% of consumers say they feel the effects in their daily lives. I've been living in LA with my wife and two daughters for the last 24 years, and we were there during the fires. It wasn't on the other side of the world. It wasn't someone else's problem. It wasn't a headline we read the next morning. We were sitting there in Santa Monica and then Venice, and we were watching where our kids went to school in the Palisades go up in flames. And it was so real. It made, someone who's been working in this space for a long time. Wow, I got goosebumps just thinking about it back that time. I don't think I've ever really had an experience in my life where there was some sort of like PTSD around climate, because seeing things that are so familiar, where your kids went to school, probably 35 of my friends lost everything they have. Everything they have. And, I've been so impressed by the resilience, the human spirit that they've shown, where they just said, that was that and we're moving on. But we also care. 63% of consumers out there say they buy based on the brands that they trust. More and more, it's not just us who've drunk the Kool-Aid. Everybody else out there is being very intentional when they're standing there in the shopping aisle and they go, am I going to reach for that product or that product? Those certifications, the trust that they've built and earned and the defensible trust that they've built really impacts purchasing decisions on a level never seen before. And then finally, 70% of companies are guilty of green hushing, which means they're doing great things, but because of the political headwinds out there that we see and so on, a lot of them are really just, not talking about it as loudly as they would otherwise. Is anyone in this room, would they put their hand up and say, have they pulled back the visibility around their sustainability efforts this year? Would anyone put their hand up and say they have? Probably not. Okay, great. That's amazing. That's amazing. You guys are one tough bunch of cookies. You're like leaning in. So climate is one of those big macro forces. Then you've got politics. Politics. The EPA has walked back $12.5 billion in clean energy funding in the last year, almost a year. And yet, we all see that 8 in 10 see that actually brands are actually political. They show up, they have a purpose, they have values, they have self-stated goals and a role in the world. So we can't hide from that expectation. And in fact, activist brands are very influential in influencing opinion and policy. So there's our opportunity to shape on the basis of politics. And, again, putting politics aside, but just being sober about the future that we're all hurtling towards, we've got probably 3 more, if not more, years of such similar headwinds coming our way. So we need to be very, very intentional about how we're going to respond. And we've got to leverage organizations like NHBSR to not only allow us to have an individual impact, but a collective impact at scale. And then you've got technology, which is reminding me who's in control right now. Technology, you are so powerful. And I see, if you talk nicely to it, is that what AI is all about? You've just got to seduce it and it comes around. All right, fair enough. fair enough. Technology, AI, it's pretty crazy. 64% of people think that we're all going to be losing jobs. And I think that's a pretty prevalent concern when you look at all the headlines. There are actually sites you can go onto Instagram that tell you the layoffs that are going on by the tens of thousands or thousands and so on, and you can just check in each week if you really want to bum yourself out. If you really want to kind of go into the week feeling low, don't do that. Then again, it could generate between roughly $3 trillion in profits, and at the same time, 27% of jobs could be enhanced by AI. And as someone who is old and has gray hair, I was there when there was I was a Nike creative for years at Wieden & Kennedy, their ad agency up in Portland. And I remember I was sitting there, and we were sitting upstairs, and you get these briefs to do these ad campaigns for fancy athletes. And these idiots downstairs were working on the web. And they were going to sell shoes online. And we were so secure and smug about how cool we were and how these people downstairs never had a girlfriend. You know what I'm saying? And here we are today. And went through that revolution, and then the social media revolution, and then the blockchain revolution. But AI is of a different order altogether. It is not iterative. It is a pattern interrupt. It is a total shift. And we see what's going inside organizations, and it's a massive disruption. So, the stakes could not be higher. And if you were to just even look at just some of the snapshots of the headlines out there, I mean, wildfires are getting deadlier and more costly. More Americans are having a direct experience with climate change. A lot of industries, like appliance makers, are pushing back against some of the walkback and some of the sustainability commitments. You've got brands like Ben & Jerry's taking on Unilever because, their assumption is that, Unilever did not like them being vocal and having a point of view. At the same time, AI is creating work slop. We've all been guilty of it, haven't we? We've all put things in there and gone, yeah, that'll do. And if everyone does that, And then finally, human-centric strategies are becoming a mandate inside the world of AI. And when you think about companies like Salesforce and so on, who have self-stated saying 40% of the work they do is now done by agentic AI or bots, that's crazy. 40% of the company, the leading company that helps other major companies transform to be relevant to the future. And so I think with this conspiracy of circumstances between climate, politics, and technology, it's never happened before. There's a higher order calling that we're all being asked to respond to. And then the second element that makes this moment unique is all the stakeholders are at the table. Let me try that again. I mean, it's interesting to see that 88% of CEOs, and this is all statistics from this year, we're not going out of our minds, we're not crazy, we're not deluded, we are pointed in the right direction with good reason. 88% of CEOs think the business case is stronger than ever for sustainability. 88% of CEOs. 8 in 10 CEOs say they need to stay ahead of regulation. 58% of companies actually experience greater buy-in from employees if you lead with your sustainability or ESG commitments. 13 to 14% actually see a boost in sales when they've got sustainability credentials, and they actually see a 28% premium in the products. And 99% of CEOs actually say they're going to lean in to their sustainability commitments. Why? Not because they care about the future, although they do, but rather because it's material to their business. Because the investor class doesn't want to invest in companies that aren't set up to succeed in the future. It's just good business. It's not about doing good anymore. It's about good business. And with that in mind, what we're trying to achieve here in this context of we and this moment of time is this force multiplier effect that NHBSR can do at a higher order than many of the organizations out there. I mean, I was learning earlier tonight that you're one of the smallest states in the country, but one of the largest legislatures here in the country. Like, you guys are all in. You guys are all in. There's like 1,000 people in your district and you're a representative. You're like engaged. And what you want to create, you've got your foundational purpose, and then each of your stakeholders build on the others. So you've got leadership with their strategy and goals on the left. Then you've got your employees and your company culture. Then you've got your customers and your brand communities. And then you've got your partners and society at large, which is what you're seeing right here. So what you do individually as a leader, whether you're a solopreneur, whether you're a mom and pop shop, or whether you're, a $1 million brand, or whether you're $100 million or whatever, is you create that momentum that gets pulled through the organization and then goes out into an organization like this that amplifies and scales your impact. And the reason this is so important, because we've been lucky enough to work with companies like Patagonia and others, and you kind of go, what are they doing differently? What do they get that others don't? Why do their brands take on a life of their own? And more often than not, it's because of this. But they do it organically, which is usually a function of who they hired in the first place or who the founders were. For example, Patagonia, privately held, Yvon Chouinard. Everyone who went there self-selected to be part of an organization that does this. So there's that alignment built in. But if you want to do this intentionally, you need to be aware of this force multiplier effect and make sure everyone's in alignment. Does that make sense? Because without which, you've got your leadership siloed over here, and then you've got your CHRO or your chief people officer over here doing their thing, and then you've got your brand marketing people who don't want to talk to sustainability because you're not taking away our budget and we don't really care because it's not cool. Well, now we're cool, actually, by the way. If I was to characterize as someone who was as pretentious as any ad guy could possibly be, I worked in Charlotte Street and Saatchi & in London, which was very self-important, and then Nike's an incredible agency, Wieden & Kennedy. The center of gravity for marketing has shifted more and more towards sustainability over the last 10 to 15 years, and it's increasingly going to do so. Why? Because the effects of our neglect, our abuse, our mistreatment of the planet and other people that we should care about is becoming increasingly material in our daily lives. We're feeling it more and more. And so when people go to shop, buy, recommend, advocate for something to someone else, it's reflecting that awareness, those beliefs, those concerns. So, it's only going to continue. And to that end, you as brands, both individually and then you as an organization, as NHBSR, need to really be clear about what role you want to play. Do you want to be activist in nature? Do you want to go out and pick a fight? From a policy, legislative point of view, do you want to go to DC and take to the steps? Do you want to, really provoke conversations and potentially polarize people and, yes, potentially expose your brand to risk in all the various forms you've seen it show up, especially in 2025? Or do you just want to be an advocate where you're really about supporting change? So you're not driving it, you're not provoking it, but you're supporting it. Or do you just want to elevate that and be an ally? You just want to see that change going on over there and go, you go team, I'm here, I'll hold your sweater, go. And you've got to be honest with yourself about that. But they're all valid roles to play, individually in terms of your company, whatever the size is, whatever industry, category, market, product you're in, but it's also valid in terms of the organization as a whole. And you need to define the voice that you want to that end as well. Not everybody needs to be aggressive and activist by nature. And this is art, not science. But if you look, you've got Patagonia one extreme and Kind Bars and Lego. Kind Bars go out and spread kindness. They do nice gestures out there in the world. While Lego, it's all about joy and creativity. But they're all equally purposeful in their own way. But other organizations are provoking issues around social justice and so on and so on. So you've got to decide as a group and individually where your comfort level is, what you want to sort of stand up for, and you can also stand behind when things get tough. And that's what I think what's really interesting about this last year. We all go to all the different conferences, and I went to Green Beers and Sustainable Brands and other things. And if there's any silver lining to this year, it's that any companies that were performative have fallen away. Companies who really, when they had tailwinds, yeah, it's great, we're all like, go planet. And then it gets tough, and they're like, oh my God, we're out of here. A lot of that has fallen away. And it's been tiring and exhausting for all of us, but it's created this keener steel within all of us. It's really fortified our resilience. Because in the same breath, we're tired, we're exhausted, we're gutted, but we're also furious that a lot of the work that we've done has been walked back. And we're bloody-minded, and we're royally pissed, and we're not going to let it stop. Does anyone else feel that way? Does anyone raise your hand if you feel that way? Right? So conflicted, but I was somewhere the other day and I asked someone how they're feeling and they said, optimistic rage. Optimistic rage. I was like, okay, that's scary, but true. You know, all right, so what are you doing now, my little mouse, my mischievous mouse? You're not doing anything. All right, let me try that. There we go. And then the story. The only reason I originally, 15, 16 years ago, started WeFirst was because I thought no amount of good intention is going to get us anywhere if we don't take people with us. And having the experience of building cultural movements through Nike and also Motorola and the Razr phone back then, I was like, wow, if you get the story right, a lot of people can come with you. And really the only light bulb for me was, but if you don't tell that story well, no one's going to go with you. And I would say another observation from the last couple of years is, if there's any silver lining, a second silver lining to the fallout over the last 20 months, it's that I think we got out over our skis in the sustainability movement. There were too many acronyms, it got a little bit too wonkish, it set ourselves up to be politicized, and we left a lot of people behind. And now we need to stop, gather ourselves, dust ourselves off, and reach back and take those people with us, because we're all concerned about the same things. Is that fair? Do you think that's fair? It got to sort of alphabet soup land. You know, we got very, very close to that. And the truth is this. I love you, little clicker. You are amazing. I'm going to keep complimenting you until you behave. Come on. You know I like you. It's mutual. There we go. One man or woman can't do it, especially when there may be some erratic behavior in question. One man or woman can't do it on their own, and I wouldn't say that to oversimplify, but there was a point where like, well, look, you go, you're going to fix this. And then one brand can't do it. I think P&G's been doing a great job in a non-chest beating way of getting out there and really making a difference and really collaborating with consumers to drive behavior shift, of which their products were a part. It wasn't about selling their products. They're really committed to behavior shift, like they've got a big program about the 50-litre home, which is homes using 50 litres of water every week and training people to do that in their homes because, you know, at scale, that's an incredible difference. And also, you know, one policy won't make a difference. And judging by, what is it now, the historic, what is the longest shutdown in history? Yeah. And we're all like, well, you're all here, but like I'm sitting there tomorrow going, am I going to have a flight home because there's no one in the traffic control towers anymore? Is that a concern? Yes. You know, it's extraordinary. So we can't look to government, you know, in the same way that we might have otherwise. And it's interesting, you know, this is not lost on captains of industry. This is not lost on heads of state. And this is the vice chairman of, and chairman of Roche, and also the interim chair of the World Economic Forum this year. And 2 weeks ago, he posted on social media, along with Larry Fink, in business, we must go from me to we. I could not agree more. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. And the power of that is really, it's accessible. Everyone has a strong sense of that connective tissue between us and the planet. And that's why I mean what you're doing here at NHBSR is so important, because we're at a moment where we're not going to get there individually with small isolated efforts, with ad hoc efforts. We've got to link arms and force multiply fast, because we're out of time, whether it's ocean acidification, loss of biodiversity, temperature rise, extreme weather. We are out of time. So your participation here is not just admirable, it's essential. If, in terms of healthy self-interest, not selfishness, healthy self-interest, we want to have a future that we can look forward to. And so that's why I find, if I was to characterize this arc, you know, we call it by different names over time, but the theme has been responsible stewardship of business and service of people and planet. And we're at a moment in time now where it's not about doing good, it's about doing good business. And we're at a time when it's not about selling people on it through clever marketing campaigns, but rather documenting a truth rather than selling a story. And we're at a moment in time where we truly need to mimic the natural world and look at those mutualities and codependencies and recognize that same infrastructure needs to exist between all of us in this room as an organization and work together to elevate the positive role of business in New Hampshire. Does that make sense? What we've done up till now hasn't worked, and we're out of time. And it's not a criticism of anybody, it's just a fact. We only need to look at the headlines each day to see it. So if that's the why, what is the how of getting this done? It's very interesting to see different responses. In terms of pattern recognition, I'd put them into 4 different buckets over the last 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, 11 months, November, hi. Where did the year go? Right? How can we be at the holidays? People have deflected, they've tried to contain it, they've adapted, and they've advanced forward. So let me talk about deflecting. Deflecting is that wonderful group of companies that just go, oh my God, we are so sorry, we never cared. Oops, who said that? You're fired. You know, we never really cared. Now, in some cases, they're government contractors, and there's almost a fiduciary duty that they've got to, mitigate or de-risk their business in a sense. That's not an excuse, but it is a reality. If you're talking about, I don't know, the Googles of the world and others who have these huge government contracts, and it's complicated. But so many companies have walked back their commitments from expediency. Then the second category would be contain. And that means, you're literally the definition of expediency. So you see BlackRock, who's now using the term transition investing. We're not committed to ESG or sustainability, although we're spending billions of dollars on it, but we are committed to transition investing. They're containing the situation, they're managing it. Then there's the third group who adapt. Now, these are those who look at the exposure they have from a business point of view and go, well, how do we recalibrate our language to be more relevant but still resonant with today's marketplace and all the stakeholders? And so this is a study by Potential Energy called The Return on Responsibility, and here you can see how some of the language has been shifting. It's interesting to see, right? Like instead of saying, let's protect biodiversity, you say, let's protect plants and animals and where they live. That's much more purple than red or blue. Because that's something people can get behind. It's very hard to argue with. No, I hate them all. And oh yes, I forgot that we're an animal too. It's so this recalibration of language, probably half of our work this year has just been kind of navigating that. So if you're in that camp, it's a balance between opportunity and necessity. And a lot of brands are doing that. But to that end, you've really got to make an effort too to depoliticize business in this way. You've got to get more bipartisan in what you're looking and listening to. The great danger of social media these days is that they are these echo chambers. We have these 2 information systems that coexist like oil and water that in part were part of the reason that we have such a divisive country as a US citizen, and also the politics are just so abrupt and abusive between each other because we've got 2 information systems and we've got to break that algorithmically reinforced bubble. We've got to reform the system, finance, media, voting reforms. We've got to influence social media and push for algorithms and accountability that doesn't encourage misinformation. It is mildly terrifying the amount of misinformation that can be spun up so quickly through AI now. So this is going to be a persistent problem. And the problem is not the content itself, it's that feeling that each of us have, I certainly have it, of disorientation because I don't know what the truth is anymore. I don't know if that thing I'm being told that sounds exactly like the way something authoritatively would be told comes from a credible source that I can trust, and if it ever even really happened. And if you do that 1,000 times ad infinitum every day, you're walking around the world with no sense of true north because there's no sense of truth. Do you know what I mean? And it's very disorientating. Half the time I feel like I'm spun around all the time. It's like everything's going wrong in every direction all the time, and everyone's saying you're not enough and you've got to do this, and no one knows if any of it's true and if anyone's any happier for it. And then you talk to your kids and they're like, was it like this when you were young? And you're like, God, no. It was so much better. Then you're like, don't say that out loud. Right? It's such a disorientating time to be a parent, let alone a kid. And then you've got to build diverse, coalitions across party, class, geographies. If technology's not going to do it for us because they can make hay by pitting ourselves against each other, then we've got to reach out to each other. We have to. And we've got to do those bridging efforts between research centers and NGOs and really kind of reweave the social fabric. And that's why getting together in a room like this and having a community that's been together for 25 years and having in excess of 200, 250 companies working together is so important and so powerful. Because if we weren't doing this, we're at the mercy of all of these misguided motives, these unspoken agendas that leave us individually and collectively disorientated. Does that seem fair to say? Because otherwise life can get damn confusing all the time. Wow. And then finally advancing. You are seeing those companies that are leaning in despite everything that's going on, who are like, damn the torpedoes. We know who we are. We're not trying to please everyone in the room. It's like walking to a party, and depending on how self-assured you are, people get to know you or not. If you try and please everyone in the room, everyone walks away going, yeah, I think they were nice. I didn't really know who they are. They just, But if you show up and you're self-determined, I would say that as someone who's been a marketer all over the world for 30 years, one thing is so true of any brand, whatever industry or category you're in. The more self-assured you are, the more your customers and your advocates and your supporters and your allies can orientate themselves around you. They can go, no, don't like you, don't like what you stand for, go to hell. Or they can go, wow, you're my people and I'm in, and I'm not just buying your product, I'm working with you towards a higher order commitment, and I'm going to talk about you to others. You've got to find your tribe. Ørsted, Danish company, used to be one of the world's largest oil and gas companies and now is the leading wind farm company in the world. And Iberdrola, they're working together to push back against the US legislation against wind farming. But they're really leaning in through legislation and lawsuits and so on, despite the risks that brings to their businesses. Then you've also got this stark contrast. Target walked back a decade, 15 years of brand equity that they'd built when they retreated their D&I commitments. The consumer boycott cost them $1.3 billion by most estimates. That's a meaningful number. That's a meaningful number. And their CEO had to leave. At the same time, Costco said, we're doubling down. And they put it up for vote, and all their shareholders and all their board voted to double down. A stark contrast in self-assuredness and the true cost. Because I think a lot of companies make a mistake. Many of them either factor in the cost of showing up in a meaningful and purposeful way, but many of them also fail to factor in the cost of not doing it, which might be you can't attract the talent you want. You see churn inside your organization. Your products don't resonate in the marketplace. You lead a vacuum and your competitor steps in and steals your thunder even though they're only doing half of what you're doing. And you often don't realize this true cost until it's too late, and then you've spent years trying to recover. Like Target will spend years trying to recover its reputation, the same way that VW did with Dieselgate. Remember Dieselgate when they fabricated the amount of emissions reduction in their diesel vehicles? And all of this is in the context of, again, not doing good, but doing good business. So Brand Finance is the largest brand valuation company, independent company based in the UK, and each year they do their study as to what is the dollar value to a business of its sustainability commitments and reputation. And they have found that there are billions of dollars being left on the table when companies don't communicate it well, and billions of dollars to be captured for those who do it well. So it really is about business value at the end of the day. And if you want a good example, in this year's report, Tesla lost over $7.3 billion in the sustainability-driven brand value, but that was actually in the social realm, not in the environmental, ESG. It wasn't in the E, it was in the S, because of the perception as to the motives of perhaps someone in charge and also the organization at large. So this is real brand equity, real reputation that has real business value. So I would like to ask you, honestly, what do you think you're doing? On your leadership team, if you're a founder, if you're a large corporation, what are you honestly doing? Who here is deflecting. Can anyone say they're deflecting? Like, we don't want to participate, we're going to pull our head in. No, that doesn't surprise me. Containing, anyone containing? Like just focusing inward rather than talking outward? Anyone containing? People are making gestures that I don't know. No. Adapting. Who's adapting some of their languaging? Yeah, I've got a couple of people who've adapted the language, yeah? Of necessity, depending on the constitution of your board, the industry you're in, the exposure you have to regulatory authorities, politics, and so on. And who's advancing? Who's doubling down and leaning in? Right? Right. All right, let's give a clap to those. And obviously, that makes a lot of sense given the nature of the organization that you are. But it's a very conscious choice. And again, NHBSR is so important because you are in good company when you do that. Crazy loves company. And when you lean in, you can come here and put your arms around each other and go, I'm not mad, right? And they go, yes, you are, but so are we. Come on in. You know? Because we can't walk away. Like everyone here self-selected to run towards the fire. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. But when things get really tough, this is when we're needed most. And all those years that we've been doing this work, when the wind was behind our back, has prepared us for this moment. It wasn't wasted. This is how we grew into who we have to be at this moment. And if we didn't have this resilience, we wouldn't be able to withstand it. So let's look at the what of we. So what do we do? How do we get it done? We've looked at why it's important. With employees, you've really got to engage your front line. So individually inside your companies, you've got to engage them dynamically as well as across the whole community. So for example, this is Sprouts, and we had the good fortune to work with them on rolling out their purpose and activating their sustainability commitments. And this was at SproutsCon in October last year in Disneyland. And 2,700 employees come together. And the whole thing was designed around 8 different sustainability stations. And then all the opportunities were for the employees to add their ideas around how to activate the purpose and sustainability across their 435 stores. And then you went downstairs, we did not know it was going to be there, went downstairs, and there was a mini Expo West with 700 vendors down there. That is a community of shared values and like-minded people working together. Powerful, powerful model of mobilizing the front line. So don't think it's just about going out to the world and talking about what you're doing. Start at home, get everyone aligned, get everyone on the same page, make sure that they have a strong sense that they have agency for impact, and then set them loose on the world. And this happens at the highest order. So we just did the culture roadmap for Unilever's Wellbeing Collective, which is a new collective that has Nutrafol, Liquid IV, Onnit, Smarty Pants, these brands. They have all the choices in the world as to what they could do, but they wanted to work out the mindsets and ways of working within the collective to create a force multiplier for growth and impact. And I share that just so that you know that this is something that companies who have resources and choices are doing, so you should prioritize it. And then also, we've got to look at what is the reality of the future that we're facing. Behave. The future of culture will be increasingly defined by the coexistence of human beings, fleshware, and agentic AI and bots. And while that may seem unfamiliar now, this ship has already sailed across so much of business. And your role, the opportunity for you in terms of AI, is to make sure that there is a moral compass within your organization. And that means you've got to provide transparency, accountability, good governance, ethics. And you've got to leverage what is unique to human beings, which is our ability to have intuition and imagination. That is something that AI cannot do on its own. So how are you going to mobilize your workforce to give them meaning in the context of this co-agency, this co-intelligence that will increasingly define the future of business. That's the opportunity. And then you've got consumers. There are so many brands, like many of them in the room, who have leaned in over the last year, if not more. So here, you see Sephora showcasing their employees, showcasing partners, leaning into diversity at a time when DE&I was being walked back, and really celebrating it very, very publicly. At the same time, those certifications that many of us have, B Corp was mentioned earlier on, put those to work for you. But one cautionary tale about B Corp and other certifications, we've done a lot of work helping brands tell their B Corp story, and one of the biggest mistakes we see is they point at their B Corp certification and say, look, we're good, we're a B Corp, and they think they're done. All that does is build the B Corp brand, and people are none the wiser about your brand. Instead, you've got to be articulate about who you are as a company, what your purpose and sustainability commitments are, and then point back to your B Corp certification as the way that you're holding yourself accountable for those self-stated commitments. Does that make sense? Otherwise, you'll do all of this effort around B Corp storytelling, and in 3 years' time, people will go, yep, still don't know who you are. And you're like, oh my God, what more do we need to do? But you're letting the tail wag the dog. So when it comes to certifications, like you see here with Thai Union, Chicken for the Sea, and brands you might think it's unlikely that they would be out there talking about the good they're doing in the world, they're leveraging those certifications and letting consumers know that they have done this work as a product, as a brand, so that when you buy that product, you are activating your agency for change as a consumer. It's not about you buying Chicken for the Sea or shrimp because of what they're doing, but rather communicating what you're doing so that the consumer can feel good about what they're doing. And this idea of being the celebrant rather than the celebrity of your stakeholder community, getting off yourself and onto them, is the biggest shift that you can make in your marketing messaging if you want to connect with people and find that they care and actually it resonates with them and they look at your content and they share it. 90% of purposeful do-good brands spend precious time and resources and good intentions doing it, and then they go, look what we've done, and everyone goes, okay. Instead of, look what you can be doing. I'll give you one more example. I worked on Adidas for 3 years in London before I went to Nike. And here was the biggest difference. Nike does not make the best shoes. They do not make the best shoes. Maybe it's Asics, who knows. But the big difference between Adidas, what do we say here? Adidas or Adidas? Adidas it was over there. Adidas it was very rational, and they would talk about the brand and its heritage and the 3 stripes and all of that. What Nike did was they better understood the psychology of the athlete than anybody else. They put all their time and energy into understanding the guy who's doing the 10 miles or the marathon or whatever it is, so that when that person, that potential customer saw their ad, they're like, oh my God, they know me. And I'm buying that product because of what it says about me. And when I wear it, it's saying something about me and my values. So I'm trying to draw a connection between a very successful marketer like Nike, what they're doing with what we're talking about here with Do Good. Don't focus on what you've done. Focus on how you can really understand what the consumer cares about and position your products as a way for them to activate what they want to say about themselves in the world. Does that shift make difference? It's like when you go to a party. Like, ladies, have you ever walked into a party and there seems to be some really nice guy, and all he does is talk about himself and all the great things he's doing, and you're like, excuse me. As opposed to somebody who goes in and is fascinated about you and really is interested in what's going on, and then you have a conversation about that common ground that you've found. It's like that. It really is like that. And I think too often we forget these fundamentals of human nature and communication, and that's why our precious campaigns don't resonate with people. And look for these collaborative but category-relevant opportunities. So Adidas is now doing Move for the Planet, where they're actually supporting sports facilities that are being affected by extreme weather around the world. Sometimes I wonder if we're just the proverbial frog in the boiling water, right? Suddenly our ad campaigns have gone from, it's not about sport, it's like, oh, all our sporting facilities have been wiped out by a hurricane. How can we help? And I was at a conference not long ago, and there was a gentleman doing a presentation around which cities in the US will be most affected, why and how that will affect the price of real estate, commercial real estate in that place. And it's kind of like, are we just, the water's boiling around us and we're going, oh, how fascinating, we're all going extinct. The money's to be made here. Do you know what I mean? We're just watching it happen, which is extraordinary. And then society, again, keeping that sort of force multiplier effect. Society at large. You see, very recently, PepsiCo, Mars, and ADM come together to really combine their efforts in and around regenerative ag. You see, Nordea, bank provide 200 billion euro to those customers, especially in climate vulnerable sectors, to support their efforts to address climate. And I cannot emphasize enough that we need to embrace the intersection between AI and humanity. We have at our fingertips this unique ability to leverage the speed, efficiency, scale of AI at the same time as we leverage our unique ability to have creativity, intuition, and empathy. And if we don't take responsibility for this new expression of we, that is humanity and AI, through good governance, through accountability, through modeling best practices, that very technology can be our undoing because it will compound the very problems we're trying to solve for, like social division and inequity and the destruction of the planet. So we need to show up as a collective in new ways where we recognize the co-agency here between humanity and technology. And when we do, we'll be able to scale global solutions at a speed unimaginable before. And we'll be able to leverage and motivate and inspire stakeholders to work towards solutions that will actually match the timelines that we're working against. So the question with AI is not what can AI do, but rather what will we do with AI? And what we need to do is to lead in the interests of everyone, and we need to lead together. So thank you very much.